Okay, let's start class. So let us summarize and review where we are so far in the story. So there are three major interests, forces that are pushing the United States towards war with Iran. The first is the Israel lobby. Remember that the Israel lobby is composed of both Jewish interests as well as Christian interests, right? Representing the Jewish interest is something called AIPAC. And they have a membership of about 100,000. But they're very wealthy. There are many billionaires in this group. So this group has financial power. In fact, AIPAC is considered the second most powerful lobbying organization in the United States. The first is the pensioners, okay? There's about 30 million of them. And their lobbying organization is the most powerful. But AIPAC is second. But also in the Israel lobby are the Christian Zionists, right? So for example, the organization Christians United for Israel has 7 million people in its membership. So together, the Christian Zionists and AIPAC are extremely powerful force in government. And they want a war in the Middle East in order to advance Israel's interests. Also remember that America is now addicted to empire, because empire represents easy money. All money has to be channeled through the US. And so there are many people in the US who just basically make their money by speculating on money, okay? So for example, Wall Street. And that has made Wall Street extremely powerful right now in US politics. And the third force is Saudi Arabia. Remember that in our discussion of Saudi Arabia, we learned that the major conflict in the Middle East is actually not between Israel and Iran, but between Saudi Arabia and Iran. For Israel, Iran is a security threat because it supports Hezbollah and Hamas. But for Saudi Arabia, Iran represents a threat to its very existence. Okay? So Saudi Arabia must resolve the Iran problem soon. Right? Now, how these three forces manifest themselves is through Trump. Okay? So basically, Trump is their champion. And privately, there's a man named Jared Kushner, who is Trump's son-in-law. He's married to Trump's favorite daughter, Ivanka Trump, okay? And Jared Kushner happens to be very good friends with both Benjamin Netanyahu, who is the leader of Israel, as well as Mohammed bin Salman, who is the leader of Saudi Arabia. Now, Jared Kushner's father, Charles Kushner, was a very prominent sponsor of AIPAC. In fact, when Benjamin Netanyahu comes to stay in the United States, he lives with the Kushner family. So one night, Benjamin Netanyahu had to stay in Jared Kushner's bedroom, and Jared Kushner had to sleep in the basement. Okay, that's how close they are. And Jared Kushner is friendly with MBS, the leader of Saudi Arabia, so friendly that when Jared Kushner started a private equity fund, Saudi Arabia invested $2 billion. Okay? So through Jared Kushner, these three forces are able to exert influence on Trump. As we also discussed, it's very likely that Trump will become president of the United States again in November, and he will pick Nikki Haley as his VP. And that means that Nikki Haley will be the one in the Trump White House pushing for war against Iran. As we discussed, Nikki Haley makes most of her money from the Israel lobby, okay? The anti-Iran lobby. We know from the first Trump administration that these forces are able to exert tremendous influence on Trump. Okay? And the evidence is, one, Trump withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal that would have secured peace between the United States and Iran. Okay? Trump moved the United States embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in Israel, which was a major, which caused major friction in the Middle East. Okay? We also know that Trump ignored the fact that MBS killed a journalist. Okay? So we also know that Trump has been very friendly with Saudi Arabia. We also know that Trump sponsored the Abraham Accords, which is trying to bring peace between Israel and other Arab countries and unite them against Iran. Okay? The last thing that Trump did, which is the most important, is that in January 2020, Trump ordered the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, who is the leader of the who is the leader of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. Okay? So from all this, we can suspect that in a second Trump term, war with Iran will be a major priority. Okay. So is this clear so far? All right. Now, we also discussed that, okay, even though there are these forces that want war with Iran, ultimately it is the U.S. military that must implement this war. And if the U.S. military refuses to go to war, then the war can't happen. So we discussed that, unfortunately, the U.S. military is very different from what it was 30 years ago. Okay? 30 years ago, the U.S. military maintained very standard military doctrine. Okay? They maintain three very important principles that all militaries must maintain in a time of war. The first is mass forces. B is avoid encirclement, right? And the third is protect supply lines. Now, the important idea is that when you fight a war like this, okay, which is traditional warfare, you must have the consent of the public, okay? Because it is the public that sends soldiers, that provides money, that gives you political support. But in 2003, the U.S. military changed its military doctrine to one of shock and awe. Okay? And what shock and awe means is that you don't have to follow these three principles anymore. You can use air supremacy. You also have technological omniscience. And you also have special forces. And this allows you to fight wars cheaply, quickly, and decisively so that you no longer need public political support for fighting wars. And as we also discussed, this created the idea of hubris in the American military. So the American military, because of the 2003 war in Iraq, are confident they can win any war, any place, against any enemy. We know that this doctrine is actually not true. And we know because of something called Operation Prosperity Guardian. Okay?